In this video, we're going to install a power steering cooler onto this 2000 Camaro. This has the 3.8 liter V6. Now, my last track day I did with this car, the power steering fluid started boiling over, and sometimes it boils over just driving a little hard on the street. So it desperately needs something, and I think the cooler will help. Now, this is a four-way cooler. You see the 4 lines going through the fins. So we need to find a spot to mount this, probably in front of the radiator, where it's going to get a lot of airflow, and this should help. Just spent some time figuring out where I want to put the cooler, and I think I got it figured out. And I've taken the lid off here a couple times, because I want to mount it in front of the radiator and in front of the condenser if I can. So this is what I've come up with. We got 2 lines that are going to come out near the upper radiator hose. It's going to tuck back in here on the radiator, or actually this is against the condenser, where this wiring harness goes. So there is enough of a gap where the condenser is not rubbing up against this. It's close, like it will move around and bump it, so we might need to insulate it or do something to protect it. And underneath here, we can mount it right here in front of the condenser. I'll straighten it out, and we have our 2 hoses going up through there. They're touching the plastic, but plastic isn't going to eat through rubber. I'm only worried about that condenser, but I think we'll be able to make it work. Now, these cars are bottom feeders, so you keep that in mind. We got the air dam here, and this is going to block the air from going back, so it's going to shoot up into here, and the first thing it's going to hit is going to be this cooler, and then it's going to go to the condenser, and then the radiator behind that. I've seen several people mount the coolers right over here, flat, but there's no wind coming here. You can cut a slot through the air dam, but still, it's going to be flat. The wind is not going to pass through the cooler like you'd think. Now, I'm sure it works, but this is going to be more efficient, and I think you can agree with that. Now, I'm nearly finished mounting this cooler here. I chose to do the zip tie thing from the back side instead of pushing through the cooler. And in hindsight, that probably wasn't worth it. I thought it would look better. It doesn't. I'm going to cut these zip ties so they're not so long. But yeah, if you're doing it, just push it through the cooler. It's easier, and it probably looks better than this. Anyways, we're working on the lines now. So we got our bottom one ran up through the hole that you see there by the wiring harness, and I've sucked all the fluid out of the power steering reservoir here, so hopefully we don't make too big of a mess, but I do have a pan underneath. Now we gotta figure out how we're gonna route and connect to the system. Now we're gonna connect through the low side. So from the reservoir, there's a line that goes to the pump, then it goes to the pump to the rack, and then it goes to the rack back up to the pump. So where we're going to tee in is after it goes to the rack, we're going to bring it to our cooler and then to our reservoir here. So we just have to find the line that's not going to the power steering pump. Now the one going to the pump is this one closest here. That makes the L into the bottom of the pump there. And then to the right of it we have a hose clamp, and this one goes to the reservoir from the rack. This is the low pressure side, and we can also tell because there's a hose clamp. Can't have a hose clamp on the high pressure side because it would just blow the line out. So that's where we're gonna tee in. Let's figure out our routing. This power steering cooler kit I bought, cheapest one on Amazon basically. It comes with 4 feet of that power steering rubber hose. That's not enough for the location I'm choosing to mount it. So I picked up another 4 feet at the auto parts store. Man, this stuff is expensive nowadays. It's worth it to just buy some in bulk on Amazon, and then there I have it. So I think I'm gonna start doing that, but we have it anyways. Let's start installing it. So we're gonna just shove it on through right where this one is. Now this one goes to the bottom of my cooler. It doesn't matter, whether they're both in or out, you can mix them up on the cooler. But I got the bottom coming up to the reservoir, so I'm going to do the top of the cooler going to the rack. So we're going to put this on top of that, slide it down there. And now we just need to start making our way towards the rack. And it is fully assembled now. So you see the two lines come in here, and then they go, one goes to the reservoir, one goes to the pump, and they fit. There's a slot between the condenser and just above the wiring harness. These two fit. I can push them in and out so they're not being pinched or anything. There's some friction because it's obviously against the condenser, but it's not like pinched at all, so you don't have to worry about that. But I do think this might eat into the lines eventually. On the bottom side here, I've tightened the cooler against the condenser. I just got to cut off the tips of these zip tie things. And you can see the lines here, and they just go up into the corner, and they're touching plastic and the plastic part of the condenser. So I'm not really that concerned, but like I said, I do think they would eventually eat into these lines. So we're just gonna have to keep an eye on this. This will just have to be something we check before every track day. Now, if I would have known I was gonna do this when I had the radiator out, the plastic part up here that's touching the lines, if you just cut that off, that's going to free up a lot more room. And it's not really doing anything. Like, that little airflow that can escape isn't going to cause your car to overheat if you do cut off a little edge there. So that would be the way to go. Car's back on the ground, filled it up, turned the wheel a couple times side to side while I was in the air, and just kept checking the fluid. We're topped off, we're a little over full, but I think once we start driving and turning around, it's going to push more fluid into the cooler. So let's start it up. We still have power steering. It's a little awkward, but we got power steering, so we're still good. Take it for a quick little lap around the block, and then we'll check the fluid once again. And after a quick lap, we are good. Check the fluid level. We are perfect now. These hoses to the touch are warm, so it tells me fluid has been going through it. The bottom one is a little bit cooler, which is the one that goes to the reservoir, which I guess that makes sense because we got one coming in, one coming out. And if fluid is going this way, this is going to be the fluid coming from the rack, the return. It's going to go through the cooler, and it's going to come back to the reservoir with this one down here, which is cooler to the touch. So it seems like it's working. I could still move these. So like I said, we'll just keep an eye on that, make sure they don't chafe through and rub through, but otherwise that's a successful install, and I'm happy with that location. Obviously a bracket would be better than the plastic zip tie thing, but I think this will do. So thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.